The Book of Mormon contains sophisticated examples of wordplay and textual connections that point to its ancient Near Eastern origins. As explored in this analysis, the frequent use of meaningful names through punning implies an underlying Hebraic source for the text. Joseph Smith and others in the early Latter-day Saint movement used special stones believed to provide spiritual visions and aid in translation or revelation. In European folk beliefs stretching back to medieval times, certain stones could reveal information not visible to the naked eye, like finding lost objects. This traveled with immigrants to North America and was present in Joseph Smith's corner of New York in the 1820s, though it was declining. As a youth, Joseph occasionally used seer stones to locate lost items or search for treasure. Eyewitnesses reported that Joseph translated the Book of Mormon by placing a dark brown seer stone in a hat, excluding exterior light, and used the stone for early revelations. Around 1830, Joseph apparently began dictating most revelations without seer stones. It seems there is some suggestion in early Mormon sources that the Book of Mormon text may have originally been written in a form of Hebrew, using modified Egyptian characters. Moroni says the text as being written in the Reformed Egyptian characters that have been altered over time, but states that if there had been enough space on the plates, it would have been written in Hebrew originally. This implies the underlying language was Hebrew but written in an Egyptian script. The prophet Joseph Smith, when referring to the title page of the Book of Mormon, describes the direction in which the text was written, the same as all Hebrew writing in general, from right to left. This further suggests the text's original language was a form of Hebrew. While the Book of Mormon text is in English, these early statements suggest that the text was translated from some attestation of Hebrew, written in an altered Egyptian script because of limited space on the plates. The English Book of Mormon is therefore considered a translation of this Hebraic original, which was written in a modified Egyptian script, but has anything like this ever happened before? An ancient papyrus written in the 3rd century BC but discovered in the late 19th century, Papyrus Amherst 63 contains an Aramaic text written in Egyptian script. In 1944, Raymond Bowen of the University of Chicago translated the first small portions. Additional sections, including a paganized version of Psalm 20, were deciphered by various scholars during the 1980s. Both Hebrew and Aramaic are Semitic languages, so Papyrus Amherst 63 contains an example of a biblical text, written in a Semitic language, using Egyptian script. What evidence is there for the Book of Mormon being the same? First, let's turn to the Hebrew Bible. The Hebrew Bible contains several notable examples of punning through the use of names that sound similar to words with pertinent meanings. One clear instance is when Abraham laughs in disbelief upon hearing that his elderly wife Sarah will bear a child. The text states, Abraham fell upon his face, and laughed and said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? After this, their son is fittingly named Isaac, which is cognate with the Hebrew word for laughter. There is similar wordplay at work when Moses earns his name in Exodus. He is so called because Pharaoh's daughter drew him out of the water. His name sounds much like the verb to draw out, thus the text itself provides an etymology for the name by linking it to Moses being rescued from the Nile. Later, when Esau bitterly laments that his brother Jacob stole both his birthright and his blessing, he points out that his sibling was well named. In Hebrew, Jacob sounds much like the verbal phrase, and he has supplanted me. So Jacob's life, in Esau's view, has indeed embodied the supplanting inherent in his name. Finally, in Hosea an ominous pun surrounds the name Ephraim. God promises to destroy the offspring of Ephraim, stating, They shall bear no fruit. The irony arises from the fact that Ephraim sounds akin to the Hebrew phrase meaning, to be fruitful. So, a cruel inverse wordplay takes shape here around Ephraim's fruitfully name. Understanding how such punning requires knowing the Hebrew meaning of the names being used, let's look at the Book of Mormon. This Book of Mormon passage contains Lehi's final blessings and counsel to his older sons Laman, Lemuel, Sam, and the sons of Ishmael. Within this counsel, Lehi employs clever rhetorical wordplay on the name Ishmael to encourage Ishmael's sons and highlight the importance of hearkening to Nephi's spiritual leadership. The name Ishmael means God will hear, or may God hear in Hebrew, and it derives from a Hebrew verb meaning, to hear or hearken. Lehi predicates the blessing he is leaving to his sons on their willingness to hearken unto the voice of Nephi. By juxtaposing the name Ishmael with the verb hearken, Lehi rhetorically targets Ishmael's sons, linking their father's name with their need to spiritually hear and obey Nephi. Just as the biblical Ishmael received blessings when Abraham pleaded for him, Lehi promises his sons a first blessing, if they will hear and follow Nephi. But he also warns that if they will not hearken, the blessing will be lost. This parallels the reality that some of Ishmael's family followed Nephi while others rebelled. Those who heard and obeyed received blessings, while the dissenters were cut off from the Lord's presence. Lehi's wordplay urges Ishmael's posterity to live up to the meaning of their forefather's name by spiritually hearing and hearkening to righteousness. It is a clever rhetorical attempt to win their full support for Nephi's spiritual leadership. The next passages contain significant wordplay and themes relating to the meaning of the name Nephi. The etymology of Nephi points to the Egyptian word nfr, meaning good, fair, beautiful. This sense of goodness and fairness seems to have influenced the Nephite self-identity as a covenant people. When the Lamanite are converted after Christ's appearance, Mormon pointedly states that their young men and daughters become exceedingly fair and are called Nephite. Later, Mormon laments the destruction of the Nephite, addressing them as, "O ye fair ones," reflecting the loss of this spiritual identity. The usage reflects Nephi's autobiographical introduction, describing himself as having been born to goodly parents. Nephi's writings aim to persuade his people to righteousness and the goodness of God. Mormon's later writings follow Nephi's lead in linking goodness and being fair and delightsome with spiritual achievement. The persistent identity as fair ones relates to the blessing of being Nephite, deriving from Nephi meaning good, fair. Nephi's introduction, highlighting his goodly upbringing and the goodness of God, foreshadows Mormon's lamentations, mourning the loss of this identity, addressing the fair ones who had fallen. The usage ties with the Egyptian etymology of Nephi's name. Nephi's autobiographical introduction had a significant literary impact on subsequent Book of Mormon writers. His prophetic successor Enos provides an almost verbatim imitation of Nephi's opening, while subtly adapting the wordplay Nephi employed on his own name. Again, Nephi's name can be linked to the Egyptian nfr, meaning good, goodly. Nephi plays on this in describing his goodly parents and the righteous upbringing they provided. Enos replaces goodly parents with stating he knew his own father was a just man. The just man wordplay points to Enos' name meaning man in Hebrew. The precise imitation is evidence that Book of Mormon writers consciously modeled literary conventions, like autobiographical introductions, after predecessors like Nephi. By adapting the wordplay, Enos pays respect to Nephi while displaying his own literary artistry. Mormon's introduction of Alma's name occurs right after he is described as a young man, which suggests an intentional wordplay linking Alma's name to the meaning young man or youth. Additionally, Mormon stating that Alma believed Abinadi's words alludes back to Abinadi's earlier quotation of Isaiah 53 verse 1, "Who hath believed our report?" This identifies Alma as the one to whom the Lord reveals his arm, making Alma Abinadi's prophetic successor. When Alma flees and hides after Abinadi's death, there is further wordplay on his name and the Hebrew verb meaning to hide/conceal. This continues as his ministry starts while in hiding, teaching and baptizing privately. The sophistication of the multiple layers of wordplay on Alma's name accentuates his importance as a prophetic leader of Nephite religion. Once again, Nephi contains intentional wordplay on Nephi's Egyptian name meaning good, goodly, linking him with being born of goodly parents and obtaining knowledge of God's goodness. Enos closely imitates the literary conventions of Nephi's autobiographical introduction. The juxtaposition of a just man may subtly echo Nephi's goodly parents wordplay. Enos models his account after his progenitor Nephi, showing reverence for him. Mormon continues the tradition by interweaving allusions to both Nephi and Enos's accounts. The introduction of Alma meaning young man, combined with his response to Abinadi, associates him with righteous predecessors who obtained divine knowledge. This positions Alma as the next prophetic successor. What's more, the first syllables of Abinadi's name are homophonous with the Hebrew word for my father, Abi. Again, this sophisticated textual patterning demonstrates richly layered craftsmanship, recasting and building on what earlier writers established. The name Abish quite likely derives from the Hebrew elements of meaning father and ish meaning a man. Put together, her name evokes the concept of my father is a man. This becomes theologically significant in light of Lehi's and Nephi's visions of the tree of life, where they see the condescension of God, namely Jesus Christ, the eternal Father, embodied in flesh as a man. The mention of Abish's name and the irremarkable vision of her father reconnect this seminal vision. Moreover, the Hebrew wordplay meshes beautifully with the context where Abish's vision is mentioned. Right before, Lamoni has declared, I have seen my Redeemer, he shall come forth, and be born of a woman, Alma 19:13. The name Abish, father is a man, resonates with this previous statement. So, in short, the proposed Hebrew etymology of Abish's name taps into a key book of Mormon doctrine, the incarnation of Jesus Christ, the eternal God. Once again, the pattern repeats. Again, to review, when Nephi introduces himself, he makes an Egyptian pun on his own name, essentially meaning good. He attributes his spiritual knowledge and faith to the goodly teachings from parents, especially his father Lehi. Enos, which is Hebrew for man, credits his righteousness to the teachings of his father, whose dedication to spiritual instruction paved Enos's path of faith. We have the introduction of Alma, whose name puns on a Hebrew word for a youth, whose conversion by the words of another father, Abinadi, catalyzes his own prophetic mission. Finally, Abish, possibly meaning a father is a man, in Hebrew, had a conversion which is also credited to the irremarkable vision of her father. Just as the righteous fathers of Nephi, Enos, and Alma transmitted converting knowledge, so too did Abish receive visionary knowledge from her own father. Ultimately Abish, whose name resonates with the condescension of God as Jesus Christ, Father is a man, allowed that fatherly knowledge to shape her life. In all cases, people are introduced through the punning of their names, followed by mention of how the transmission and embracing of spiritual knowledge from fathers paved the way for individual and communal conversion. King Benjamin's name, meaning son of the right hand, symbolizes power and authority, fitting for a king. In his address, he uses covenant language to make his people the sons and daughters of Christ and joint heirs at God's right hand. This appears to be deliberate wordplay, juxtaposing the concepts of royal sons and daughters with being at God's right hand. Benjamin universalizes motifs his audience would have associated with kings to apply to all his people, essentially making them all potential Benjamins or royal heirs. He wants them sealed and marked as eternally Christ's, the true king, so he gives them Christ's name rather than his own, though still playing on the symbolism of his own name. His warning about ending up on the left hand of God, if Christ's name is blotted out, continues this left versus right hand contrast. Overall, Benjamin fulfills the meaning of his name Benjamin by enabling his people to become royal sons/daughters at God's right hand through Christ's enthronement and atonement, unifying his rhetoric. These verses contain sophisticated examples of wordplay and punning involving personal names, which we have already seen. Benjamin's 3 sons, then describes teaching them the language of his fathers, and the prophecies which had been delivered by the hand of the Lord. This creates a further pun on a sons, and the meaning of Benjamin's name. Once again, the sophistication of interwoven textual puns on personal names shows ancient Near Eastern literary techniques, which then gave birth to a new literary tradition, appearing throughout the Book of Mormon. Gershon derives from the Hebrew yaras, meaning, to inherit, possess, thus the name denotes, place of inheritance, or place of possession. Connecting Gershon to inheritance fits the narrative of the Lamanite converts being granted this land. The text directly parallels the Hebrew meaning with the converts inheriting Gershon. The converts are also described as taking possession of Gershon. This matches the yara's sense of a take possession. The text pointedly juxtaposes possession and Gershon. Zarahemla breaks down as Zerah meaning seed, and Emel translating to compassion, or a mercy, thus it denotes seed of compassion. The text directly connects Zarahemla to both meanings. Wordplay on Emel compassion occurs in Alma. Zerah a seed fits usages in Mosiah emphasizing the descendants inhabiting Zarahemla. It also suits the concept of the Aspered in Mosiah and 3rd Nephi. These intricate narratives feature apt explications tailored to the Hebrew name. This level of language mastery points to translation from a Hebrew original. The name Heshlan very likely derives from a Hebrew verb, *hsl, which is attested in the Bible with the meaning, to crush, break in pieces, make feeble. For example, in Deuteronomy 25 verse 18, it refers to the Amalekites targeting the stragglers among the Israelites. Additional cognate words reinforce this crushing meaning. The Aramaic word with mekranel in Daniel 2 verse 40 means to crush, or break in pieces. In post-biblical Hebrew, the verb elf takes on the specific sense of crush, or batter. And the Akkadian cognate alu holds the similar meaning of to crush, shatter. So, by adding the locative suffix on to *hsl, the name Heshlan quite transparently signifies a place of crushing. This fits perfectly as a description of Coriantumr's unexpected pivotal defeat to shared upon those plains. The crushing of his armies leaves him unable afterwards to contain the self-destruction of his people. So, in summary, the Hebrew etymological roots of Heshlan provide the transparent meaning of a place of crushing, which Moroni leverages as a literary device to signal the crushing defeat that sealed the final destruction of the unrepentant Jaredite. The key to interpreting these verses rests in the rich wordplay Mormon constructs around two names, Mosiah and Ammon. The name Mosiah likely derives from the Hebrew mya with makron h, meaning Yahweh is Savior, or the Lord is Savior. This becomes profoundly significant in light of the Lord's promise to deliver Mosiah's sons, emphasizing God as divine warrior rescuer. The name Ammon stems from Hebrew mn/mn, denoting faith, trustworthiness. This is reinforced by the term translated faithfulness, mna with circumflex in Hebrew. The play on Ammon and mna with circumflex underscores his critical role in accomplishing the conversion of many Lamanite, fulfilling the Lord's oracle that many shall believe Yam, the Son's words. The sophisticated wordplay and meaningful punning on personal names found throughout the Book of Mormon points to an ancient Near Eastern provenance. These literary techniques resonate with examples from the Hebrew Bible and fit comfortably within that milieu. Please read the peer-reviewed sources in the description for greater detail.